This is crazy, but this podcast actually started 30 years ago in a prison cell. I was 19 years old, had just been sentenced to 15 years in prison. I believed I would die in that cell, but at some point, there was a shift. A shift that caused me to ask myself, how can I break the cycle? How do I overcome all the setbacks? How do I achieve my hopes and dreams and the life that I deserve? This is a podcast about that shift. This is a podcast about survival. This is a podcast about picking yourself up after life has knocked you down. My name is Ian Humphrey, and this is my podcast, Time to Rise. Hey, this is week 2 of 2022. Now, some of you right now, so the first, anytime there's a new year, we set resolutions and then we checks and balances to see how well we're hitting those goals that we set for ourselves. And I'm really no different. Every year I do start the year off with some things that I hope to achieve that year. Now, week 2 is over with. And some of you maybe you're slaying those New Year's resolutions. You crushed it. You killed it. You were motivated. You were inspired. And guess what? You did your thing. And then there's some of you, maybe you're ready to throw in the towel after you had a bad start. You didn't do anything you set out to do. You hit the snooze every day. You drove right past the gym. You didn't pack that healthy lunch. It was just a rough week for you. But you know what? That's okay. Here's the deal. For those of you that had a bad week, don't beat yourselves up. As they say, this is not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? Every day, here's the deal. Every day, if we've stumbled, we get a do-over. But it's important that you reset your intentions. It's important that you understand your why and that you rededicate yourself to achieving whatever it is that caused you to write down those goals in the first place. All right? Now, here's what I got for you today. Simple 3 tips I believe that's going to successfully help you to stick to the process. Okay, 3 tips that will successfully help you stick to the process, that will help you increase your chances of achieving your goals, because there are never any guarantees. But when it comes to achieving your goals, what you want to do is stick to the process, because it's by sticking to the process that you increase your chances of achieving whatever it is that you started this year with. All right. So I got 3 things. One is making sure that 3 things I want to talk about today briefly. One is make sure that your why is big enough. Okay. It's not enough to just have a why. You got to make sure that your why is big enough. Number 2, don't celebrate too soon. All right. Third one, last one, is don't get comfortable with the almost. Don't get comfortable with the almost. Okay, those are 3 things. Now here, before I talk to those of you that crushed it, I want to talk to those that stumbled a little bit. All right, but once I'm done talking to you, keep listening, because eventually you're going to be on the other side. You're going to be the ones crushing it too. Okay. Now, quick confession. I got a quick confession. I stepped on the scale a while ago and I realized, you know what? I need to lose probably about 20 pounds. Yep. I got that daddy body thing going on. And, society, from what I've been reading in articles and other things, it seems like society is trying to convince me that my daddy body is popping right now. The daddy body is what's in. But I'm just not I'm just not ready for it yet. I'm not ready. And I looked in the mirror and I say, oh man, I got the daddy body going on. I got to do something. And it's about 20 pounds. And here's the other part of it. Last year, our daughter, Aaliyah, she got engaged. She's a 2nd grade teacher, fabulous teacher. But she got engaged to Javon, great guy. And they're going to be getting married in June in Jamaica this year. Now, when the engagement happened, here's what I told myself. I said, I'm not showing up in Jamaica with no daddy body. I just can't. I just didn't want to do that. I had this vision that's just not what I wanted. But the issue is, that's all I did. The only thing I did was I said that to myself. I didn't take any real action. Now I did hit the gym every now and then, but it was easier to not go, especially with the coronavirus. Now I did go periodically, but I didn't go enough to really make a difference. I didn't do enough to really make any long lasting changes. I know some of you understand what I'm talking about. The other thing is, I also told myself that my reason for getting in shape, I told myself that my why was because I wanted to look good for Aaliyah's wedding, for my daughter's wedding. I think that's something oftentimes that we tell ourselves when it's time to get married, or when it's time for a special event that requires new clothing. But I said, when I walk down the aisle with her, when I walk her down the aisle, I don't want to look better than she does. But daddy want to look good. I want to look sharp in my blue suit. Okay, that's what I told myself that my why was. But listen to me. Looking sharp was not a good enough why for me to commit. Because now we're we're about 6 months away. Okay. So here's my thing. When you look back at your why, is it enough? Because here's what I've learned: when your why is big enough, you become consistent in the process. And as I said earlier, it's the process that will lead to you achieving your goals. So when I look back again, when I look back on some of the goals that I've achieved, here's what I know. When those goals had meaning, or I'm sorry, when the why had meaning, when the why had meaning, sticking to the process became easier, and it gave me purpose. Okay. Let me give you an example. You all know I was in prison. It's not a secret anymore. But while I was in prison, I told myself, I said, when I get out of here, I'm never coming back. Now, many of men have said that. And at the time of my release in 1997, the recidivism rate was 70%. 7 out of 10 people went back to prison, usually within the first 4 years. So the odds just weren't in my favor. But again, I beat those odds, and I've not been back, other than to visit other people or to run and facilitate programs. So we ask ourselves, how come? That's the question. And here's why I believe I was ready, or I was able to beat those odds, is because my why was big enough at the time. See, I said it earlier, why is what's going to help you stick to the process, but your why's got to be big enough. I walked out of that prison again in 1997. I had this list in my pocket that I've been carrying around for a few years. And it was a list of things that I wanted in my life, a list of things that I knew I can't accomplish these things if I'm in prison. So I want to share that list with you, but I want you to keep something in mind. I was 20 years old when I wrote it. So your why, it changes over time. And so you've got to make adjustments to it. Okay. But I was 20. So this list it represents uh, my why back in the day. So I said, hey, I wrote down on my list. I said, I want to, I want a car. I said, that's what I wrote down. I said, I want a car, but not just any car. I want a car that doesn't backfire. Okay. My first car was a 63 Dodge Dart, had push button gears, and it backfired. Growing up in LA, let me tell you something. The last thing you need is a car that backfires. All right. So I said, I want a car. Second thing on my list, I said, I want a house with a fireplace. I believe that all wealthy people have fireplaces. So I said, one day I want to become wealthy, and I want to get a house with a fireplace. It didn't dawn on me that I lived in California. I didn't need no fireplace. not where I live, but let me tell you, I live in Colorado now. It snows. And every house I've owned, I think 3 houses so far, each and every one has had that fireplace in it. Third thing on my list, I said I wanted a career. I wrote down I want a wife and I want a family. Last thing that I wrote down on that list, and I don't know why, but I also believe that wealthy people own the Persian cat. Well, all wealthy people own Persian cats. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's because my grandmother used to watch Dallas. Maybe they had a Persian cat in there, or maybe it was a Fancy Feast commercials. I don't know. But when at the time I wrote this on my list, I had never even seen a Persian cat before. But I said, hey, one day I'm getting out of here and I'm getting me one of those cats. I carried that list around in my pocket for years. Right? It was part of my why of beating the odds. And that list, looking at that list, helped me stick to the process of taking classes, of not getting involved in certain groups, of just sticking to my goals, sticking to myself, surrounding myself with other individuals that planned on beating the odds as well. Okay. But I had that list, I stuck to it, and as a result, I would never see, I've never seen the inside of a prison again as an inmate. Now, of course, my why was larger than that list. Okay. But that's the why that I want to share with you today in today's podcast. Okay. And let me tell you something. Update. Today I've got everything I wrote down on that list. Everything I wrote down on that list, but except for the Persian cat. Believe it, hey, my son is allergic to our son is allergic to cats, so yeah, that's probably not gonna happen. But here's the deal: my why for losing weight. It's not because, or it should not be because I want to look good in a suit, because that's not big enough. The why that I have to tell myself is this, and this is what I've rededicated my achieving this goal to. I've readjusted my why. But what I got to tell myself is this: her daughter's getting married. Yep. They'll possibly, her and Javon will possibly have kids one day and make me a granddaddy. I want to do whatever is in my control to be here as long as possible with my wife, with my children, to see my grandbabies, to spoil those grandbabies, to watch them grow up, play sports, graduate, maybe get married, and have kids of their own. Think about that. Because if I focus on that as my why, it will definitely increase my chances of sticking to the process of losing weight. And I believe that if I stick to that process, I will lose that weight. I will become healthier. And as a result, I will increase my chances of being here longer. So being alive is a big enough why for me to stick to the process of getting up early, going to the gym, of working out when I don't feel like it, when I feel tired. It's a big enough why for me to change my eating habits and only have one slice of sweet potato pie or only a half a bag of M&Ms. All right. So here's what I know. If you want to lose weight, maybe your why should be I want to live longer. If you want to make more money, maybe your why should be that you want the financial freedom that will allow you to travel, that will allow you to spend more time with your loved ones. Okay. If you want to write a book, I had somebody email me, say that was on their goal list. But if you want to write a book, maybe your why is that you want to share your knowledge so that others can change their lives the way that you have. So again, when it comes to sticking to you, whatever goals that you set, I don't, if it's a New Year's goal, mid-year goal, I don't care what kind of goal it is. Just make sure that your why is big enough. Okay. Now, here's For those of you that crushed it this week, first of all, congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back. But here's what I need you to do: recognize your accomplishment, but don't celebrate too soon. Don't celebrate too soon. Here's what I mean when I say that. Uh, it's important to recognize what Robin Sharma, someone that I listen to, whose books that I read. Robin Sharma, he calls them micro victories. So it's important to recognize the micro victories. It's important to recognize when you've won the day. It's important to win the day and to recognize, I guess, when you've done that. But when I say recognize and don't celebrate, I want to talk about something. I have a loved one and they suffer from addiction. I've seen them fight those demons. I've also seen the triumph, though, when they've made it through a day or 2 days without drinking. Those are micro victories. They won the day. And that should be recognized. Once they get to a week, no drinks, they should recognize that. However, when I say don't celebrate too soon, when I say celebrating too soon, or I'm saying celebrating too soon, I believe can cause complacency. Once they get to a month and those around them, maybe they've moved away from recognition to celebration. Or maybe in their mind, they've become successful enough to move away from recognition to celebrating the 1 month of sobriety. They made it. I did it. When that happens, I believe that it's possible, or it's possibly easier for them, or it's easier for them to go and have a small drink because they're thinking, hey, I made it. I got this. Let me celebrate and reward myself with a little sip. That's celebrating too soon because we all know where that can go. Now, I use something like that, an example like that, because the goals that we set for ourselves, I hope that they're big out, or the goals that you set for yourself. I hope that they're these huge, massive goals. I hope that they're goals that when you make them, that you can't afford to stumble. You can't afford to not achieve those goals. You hear me? When I think about losing 20 pounds, I cannot afford to not lose that weight. I can't afford to not become healthier. Why? Because the cost, if I don't, is too high. Yeah. Now, something that I know about myself is I kind of struggle to find the balance because oftentimes I have to be all in. I got to be all in. When I set the goal, it's all in. It's pass or fail. So sometimes I'm a little bit too hard on myself. So I struggle with that a little bit. When I decided to become a motivational speaker, one of my first hurdles was I needed to get over my fear of public speaking. That's important. That's like the first hurdle is, I got to get over the fear of talking to folks. I had to get comfortable, talking about the worst part of my life. I had to get comfortable talking about what I had learned, things that I wasn't proud of, things that I knew people would judge me for. Someone told me to join this organization called Toastmasters, an organization that could help me to do all these things. So what did I do? I went out the next week. It was less than a week, but I found a Toastmasters group that met once a week, every single week, because some Toastmasters groups, they meet once a month. Some meet every other week, but I said, I need one that meets once a week. And I made the commitment to not missing one meeting for 1 year if I could help it. So in this program, if you don't know anything about it, you write and you deliver uh, speeches over a course of time. You learn different things that go into making a presentation memorable. So that's why it was important to me. But after I had given my first speech in the meeting, guess what? I recognized my accomplishment. I didn't celebrate. Why? Don't celebrate too soon. I didn't want to come. I did not. I didn't want to become complacent. And so after my second speech, my fourth speech, guess what? I recognized my accomplishment, but I didn't celebrate. Why? Because I felt like it would have been too soon. It took me 1 year to complete the program, or at least the first phase. It took me a year, I should say, to deliver 10 speeches. And then it took another few months before I would give my first speech to an actual live audience, to a paid group of people. After delivering that speech, accomplishing my goal of speaking in spite of being afraid, accomplishing my goal of talking about some difficult times in my life, accomplishing my goal of leaving my audience with tools and strategies on how they could change their lives and live the life that they deserved in spite of what they've been through, in spite of having the odds stacked against them. Yeah, that's when I that's when I felt like I could celebrate. Why? Because I'd accomplished what I set out to do. And since then, I've delivered thousands of speeches. So I could say that I did that. At the end of this past week, my wife, she says, "Hey, how are things going with your commitment to working out?" Or maybe she didn't say it exactly that way, but she said, "How are things going with your working out?" And I said, "Hey, this week I had made it to the gym 4 days that week." So I told her, I said, "Hey, I made it to the gym 4 days this week, and my commitment per week was was going 3 days." And she said, "Hey, I'm proud of you. You did it." And my response was, "Well, why?" Not the best response. I struggle sometimes with praise. But my response was, "Well, why? I haven't done anything. I haven't accomplished my goal. My goal is not accomplished yet." I was thinking in my mind, it's only been a week. So after answering that question, it got me to thinking, why can't I accept early accolades? And the answer that I've come to, and maybe some of you experience this too, but I believe that it might cause me to become complacent. And when we become complacent, sometimes we lose sight of our goals. So that's what I'm saying. If we recognize versus celebrate, there's a difference. If we celebrate complacency can lead to losing sight of the goal. Now, here's a mistake that I've made in the past when it comes to achieving goals. If, for example, if I had committed to working out 3 days per week, and if I exceeded that goal and went forward, I celebrated. How? Well, I gave myself credit for the next week. So if I celebrated or if I worked out 4 days this week and my commitment was three, I'd carry over a day to the next week. Next week, I only have to work out 2 days. I was celebrating too soon. Just give myself credit. When it comes to eating healthier, am I the only one that has done this? You make it through week number 1, Monday through Friday. You followed your meal prep, you're planning. You didn't eat a single M&M. What do? We celebrate. How? By eating too much on Saturday and negating most of the progress that we had built throughout the week. So I'm going to give one more last example. I think I have one more example I want to give about celebrating too soon or becoming complacent and not making it to our goals. Maybe you've seen these videos. There's videos that I've watched where this football player, he picks up a fumble and he's running towards the end zone. And it looks like he's about to make the game-winning touchdown. So this football player, thinking he's going to score, he slows down, raises his hands in victory, only to have somebody from the opposing team catch up to him, knock the ball out of his hand, and knock the ball out of his hand before he scores the winning touchdown. He's celebrating too soon, or he celebrated too soon. I was watching another video. It was a track meet, and the guy's name was Pepio or something like that. No, it started with a P. But he was ahead. He was winning the track meet, and he slowed down. As he got closer to the finish line, believing that he was going to win, he starts cheering, and he started waving his hands, his arms in the air, pumping up the crowd. But while he was doing all of that, the guy in second place, he started to run harder, faster. And he dug deep because he could see that this guy was celebrating too soon and he had a chance. So while this guy was raising his hands and celebrating, the second place, the person that would have taken second place, he came from behind and he won by a tenth of a second. And when they interviewed Pepio, the person who should have won the race, he said, I just wanted to celebrate winning in front of our crowd. He said, I was excited. But the last thing he said is this. He says, but the race wasn't over. And that's really the key, is not celebrating until the race is over. Recognize, but don't celebrate. So as you complete what is now week 2, or let's say a month from now, as you complete month 2 or 3 successfully, don't celebrate too soon. Recommit every single week to sticking to the process. Recognize what you've done, but don't celebrate because the mission is not complete. Now, before I make my last point, if you're still listening. So my first point was making sure your why is big enough. And my second point was not celebrating too soon. So before I make my last point, if you're still with me, I want to give something away real quick. If you can share this podcast and tag me on Twitter, Facebook, or if you don't have social media, you can email me and just kind of tell me or let me know what you took away from this week's podcast. I'll pick someone and I'll mail you a t-shirt. And if you want a copy of my book, I'll send that as well. So just a way of showing my appreciation. All right. Now here's my last point. The last point was don't get comfortable with the almost. Yeah, don't get comfortable with the almost. Years ago, our daughters were on a track team with the daughters of some of our friends. Now, all these girls were fast. But what has always stood out to me was this. Landry was our friend's youngest daughter. I think she might have been 8 or 9 at the time. But I can remember watching her finish a race in second place. Or I'm sorry, I remember watching her finish a race in first place, and she would celebrate. But every time she took second place, she would take that second place ribbon. Her whole demeanor would change. And you would watch her. She would take that second place ribbon. She'd walk over to the trash can and throw it away. Even though the difference between first and second could have only been a tenth of a second, meaning she'd almost won that race. Even though her coach said to her, "You almost had her," Landry didn't care. She threw that second place ribbon in the garbage because for her, almost wasn't good enough. For her, almost didn't count. For her, at that time, Landry just wasn't comfortable with almost winning. Why? Why wasn't she? How come? When I think about it, here's what I figured. When Landry stepped on the track, her goal was to win. She wasn't comfortable almost achieving her goal. Now, Landry, she doesn't run track anymore. She received a full ride scholarship to play basketball at a Division I college. But that's something that only 6.5% of all high school women accomplish. So she's doing big things. So when you set your goals, as you complete or nearly complete those goals, don't be comfortable with almost achieving them. Now I can also remember when I first started writing my book. It's not about the knockdown, it's about the get up. It was a goal that I had set while I was in prison. Didn't start it, but so one day if I get out of prison, I'll become successful. I said, I want to write a book. And my why and my purpose was one day I hope to change lives. One day I hope to share the process that I use to help me turn my life around with other people so that they could experience the same or even greater success than I had. I started that book in 2010. I committed to writing every single week, and I did. I wrote every single week until that book was almost finished. Then I took a break because I felt like I deserved it. I became complacent. I became content with just puffing my chest up and telling people I'm writing a book and it's almost finished. Let me tell you when I finally finished and published that book. 4 years later, started in 2010, finally finished it in 2014. It should have been done in 2010. Now, I will share this with you. Today, I've had multiple schools that use the book as a teaching curriculum in their schools. So I've had some success with it. But I can't help but think that this gift was delivered late to the world. Why? Well, because I lost track of my why. I celebrated too soon. And for a while, I was comfortable with the almost. Let me ask you this question before I wrap this thing up. What gifts have you robbed this world of? What gifts have you robbed yourself of? That's a better question. Simply because you've lost track of your why, or you've celebrated too soon, or maybe like me, you've become comfortable with the almost. My goal is to lose 20 pounds, not 15. Now, if I get to 15, I'm gonna recognize that. I'm gonna recognize that. Trust me and believe it. But I can't get to 5. I can't get to 10 and say, I'm almost there. I can take a break. Why? Because there's too much on the line. The cost is too high. So when you think about your hopes and your dreams, when you think about the goals that you set for yourself, focus on your why. Make sure your why is big enough. Don't celebrate too soon. And don't become comfortable with the almost. I think I'm going to leave this episode right there. So I'm going to wrap it up. So those are my 3 tips, I guess, to successfully stick to the process that I believe will help increase your chances of not only achieving your goals, but also living your hopes and your dreams. My name is Ian Humphrey, and I don't care if you remember my name, as long as you remember my message. Thanks for rocking with me.